That button there. Good morning. Everybody take a seat. Good morning. If I can get the line to shut up for a few minutes, we'll get started. Good morning. Is it a holiday? It was yesterday. Okay. Y'all bow with me. Gracious Heavenly Father, again we come asking you to forgive us of our sins, to lead, guide, and direct us in all that we do. Give us compassion to know that what we do here affects all. Give us character to know that what we should do here is the correct thing. Lead, guide, and direct us. Help us be better people. In Jesus' name, amen. Sorry, I'm a little late. Too many people want the most important bill of the day on them. Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Rules Committee. I am here today on House Bill 811. This is the bill that will put a mechanism in place so that dedicated funds that have been set aside for Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, Solid Waste Trust Fund, Peace Officer and Prosecutors Training Fund, Indigent Defense, and Joshua's Law will be spent as they were originally intended to be spent. And rather than approaching it from a constitutional amendment, which would be required if we were to require the legislature to appropriate these funds, this approaches it from the fee perspective and says that the legislature has the discretion to appropriate whatever it feels necessary. But if it does not appropriate the full amount that is raised by the fee, then the fee will be reduced to the amount that is actually appropriated. So it doesn't restrict the legislature's ability to appropriate. It adjusts the fee so that it is truly a fee for service. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Just hang in there, Mr. Powell.
Friday, this Friday. Sorry.
Are there any questions, Ms. Smith?
Thank you for this bill. Would you describe again the trust funds that are involved in this?
Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, that's the 75-cent surcharge on tipping fees. Solid Waste Trust Fund, that's the $1 tire fee. The Peace Officer and Prosecutors Training Fund, that's a add-on onto traffic and criminal charges. Indigent Defense, which comes from a variety of different fees, and Joshua's Law, which is a 5% add-on on traffic tickets for driver's education training.
Thank you. One more question, Mr. Chair. So essentially, you've tried to identify the various trust funds that generated fees and have put some.
Yes, ma'am. As a matter of fact, there are more than these. These were singled out as sort of a pilot program because it's not been tried this way before. And number one, I want to make sure that it actually works before we impact other funds. And second of all, this will hit about $50 million in the budget, but it's phased in over a 5-year period, so we should be able to handle it with growth. But if we'd added other fees, it might have had an adverse impact on the budget. So those were the two reasons for singling out these 5.
Thank you. Thank you for the.
Ms. Hughley.
Mr. Chairman, I think he was getting to my question, which is the budgetary impact of all of these fees. If it operated the way you are outlining here, what would be the impact to the budget?
Well, if you did it all at one time, it would be around $50 million. But if we phase it in over 5 years, it's approximately $10 million a year over a 5-year period of time.
And is there a note that says that somewhere, a fiscal note that says that somewhere?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Because what it does is it would only have a fiscal note if the legislature doesn't appropriate the amount necessary in order to keep the fees in place. In other words, for instance, Joshua's Law right now generates about $10 million a year. We're currently not appropriating anything. And so if we appropriated $2 million the first year, then the fee stays to generate $10 million. If we do $4 million the next year, it stays. In other words, the fee does not get reduced unless we don't make the target appropriation rate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Powell's brother, Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. First, I bring to you House Bill 880. This bill has been crafted on behalf of the Georgia Real Estate Commission. It does clarification language, cleanup language, and allows them to have another tool at their disposal for dealing with real estate brokers, agents, and appraisers right now with a letter of findings for those who might have minor run afoul of the rules and regs, but not enough that they need a sanction or a citation. And it also closes certain loopholes that's been found in the licensing law that deals with real estate brokers, appraisers, and salespeople.
Any questions? Next.
And second bill, Mr. Chairman, would be House Bill 865 under the modified category. This is an administration bill. Back a few years ago when DMVS was dismantled, some of the enforcement was left over to Public Service Commission that deals with motor carriers. And what this does, this shifts, it basically unplugs and shifts those functions at the PSC over to the Department of Public Safety. Does some cleanup on that language. Basically just unplugs from one, moves it to the other with very few substantive changes in the law.
Good bill.
In the budget, the money has already been transferred or recommended by the governor to have that budgetary item transferred from the PSC over to DPS. This bill is endorsed by the PSC. They naturally want out of it because they don't have any enforcement powers. DPS wants it and the governor wants it.
Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, Representative Powell, back here. With respect to the limousines and the common carriers like that, you've now moved them from PSC to public safety.
Yes, sir.
You did not create any situation where they could be moved back under those individualized bureaus or anything like that.
Limousine.
I moved them originally 12 years ago.
Limousine carriers have been, they've worked with us on the language to be sure that they were taken care of, as well as the movers of household goods and all those other entities. Everybody is happy with this bill.
Thank you, sir.
As best I can tell.
Would you like to say 166 just out loud?
Well, I would love to, but I was told that House Bill 166 is the engineer and surveyor's bill for engineer licensing and engineering training and surveying training that basically would say that they need to have a 4-year college education.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I bring to you House Bill 933. Deals with pre-need escrow accounts for perpetual care cemeteries. It simply allows a pre-need contract to release escrow funds to go ahead and buy memorials and to be stored in a bonded warehouse. We're about the only state that disallows this, and there's no known opposition to the bill that I've heard of.
Any questions? Thank you.
Can I mention one other to you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
House Bill 640 deals with a bill that I passed several years ago dealing with the insolvency fund. I assume code revision did not clean this up, and elect counsel has asked me to correct the language. This bill actually went into effect 2 years ago and expired 12/31/10, so we're just cleaning up language on House Bill 640. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Ms. Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for House Bill 268 to be considered. This bill is to do with the notices on property, so it's actually a property owners act. What it's doing is clearing up what needs to be posting on the signs that go on each one of the areas that are going to be rezoned, adding a date. Also, it is designated in here a little clearer with the clarification that not only do you have the notice in the legal organ of the counties, but also it will be presented to each adjoining landowner so that they will be notified by mail, by U.S. mail, snail mail, not by certified. So there's not much cost. I've worked very closely with the County Commissioner Association as well as GMA. We seem to have an agreement, and I want to thank Representative Willard also for his participation as we've worked through the process for the posting of zoning and notification.
Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I looked at is there anything in there that would increase the size of the sign so that they can be read from the road instead of you having to get out? And
the sign stays the same. It was just additional information to be added to that sign as the date.
That means that that all the writing's going to be a lot smaller now, right?
Well, if you add the date, I guess some areas would be a little bit smaller, but the point is that it also says that it has to be in a very clearly location so that the public knows that the zoning is going to be taking place.
All of us that are getting older are having trouble reading those signs.
Oh, I agree with you on that.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Before I get started, I'd like to embarrass my two grandsons. I haven't had a chance to do that this morning. They're sitting in the back. Matthew and Nathaniel, raise your hand. They're hating this. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'm here to ask for Proposition 820 is a insurance bill. What this bill does, two things. We've got a company wanting to come into the state of Georgia, America's Car Mart. They are doing this in 9 states, I believe. Their headquarters in Benton, Arkansas. And they sell used cars, 7 or 8 years old, usually in small cities. They're wanting to come into the state of Georgia, but they want two things for us. Number one, in House Bill 820 provides for an exemption in the insurance code for used car dealerships that want to sell limited repair warranties on the vehicles. They've got to have $100 million in assets. Show that with their SEC filings or their W-2 or their income statements filed with the Commissioner's office, or post a bond of $250,000. The Insurance Commissioner's office is fine with this. Like I said, they have these exemptions in 9 other states. The second part of the bill allows them to sell debt cancellation waivers to the customers. If they buy a used car and something happens, they lose a job or whatever, the vehicle's paid for. It's like gap coverage on new cars. And the same limitation applies, $100 million in assets for them to waive the insurance. Really, there's no companies that sell the excess insurance for something of these coverages in most areas anyway. So this is trying to bring business into the state of Georgia. It was passed through the Insurance Committee, no questions. The Commissioner's office agrees with this. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Okay, questions? Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I How would this be applicable to small used car lots in terms of having a requirement to have a certain amount of assets? I mean, I can understand how this would be beneficial for a large operation to come in and set this up, but would this be if they're able to provide this kind of gap coverage that you talked about, that if you lose your job, your car is paid for, or some of the other benefits, does that not create a competitive advantage for them that local used car lots couldn't?
They can do that if they want to buy the insurance. They just got to, it could possibly be a disadvantage for some small guys. We're trying to bring in more business. They don't have a problem in any of the states they're in now. There's plenty of competition. We've not had that question come up as far as competitive disadvantage for anybody.
And my concern is that if they buy a bond, that there's a business cost there. But instead of buying a bond, if they have a certain amount of certain size, just by virtue of their size, they're able to offer this special kind of product.
That's correct.
That a used car lot would actually a small guy would have to actually pay for a bond and pay cash to do that, versus the mere size of a company coming in to do this. To me, maybe we could talk offline.
Okay, be fine.
It just concerns me, those competitive issues.
Any other questions? Mr. Maxwell.
Mr. Chairman, would I be out of line to ask for House Bill 250? Representative Weldon and I have talked about that. He said if he couldn't get here today, he'd like me to ask for it. It came out of the Retirement Committee. This is a judicial retirement bill. Back in 1998 session of the Georgia legislature, the legislature merged the Superior Court judges' retirement system, the trial judges, solicitors' retirement system, district attorney retirement system. They all came into one retirement system. They had a mishmash of different options and ways of allowing people in. What they wound up with in the judicial retirement system, when you first become a member of the judicial retirement system, you had to elect what kind of spousal coverage you wanted on day one. That's the only retirement system in the state that does that. When they came into the judicial retirement system, they had to decide if they wanted spousal coverage or not. I've been working for 3 years trying to get this changed. So what this bill allows now, Section 1 of 250 ensures that the amount of benefits paid out to the members and any beneficiaries is not less than the total members' contributions plus interest. Section 2 allows vested members who become members before July the 1st, 2012, who did not elect spousal coverage when they first became members, to change their minds. They can now select spousal coverage and pay the full actuarial cost. And Section 3 says that individuals that become members on or after July the 1st of 2012 will no longer have to make their spousal coverage election upon becoming a member, but they can wait until they apply for benefits and then make that determination, which is what all other retirement systems do. So that's basically what that bill does, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring two bills this morning for your consideration. On the front page, House Bill 855. This is a measure that you may remember 2 years ago, House Bill 168, where we did away with the high-cost UAF fund. The Senate saw fit to change that back to 20 years. And what this does is reopen that and say for the 17 companies that are currently receiving it, we would propose a elimination of that fund over a 3-year phase-out period. The fund has risen dramatically, over 60% since passage of House Bill 168, and this simply puts a very realistic plan in place to eliminate the fund over 3 years.
Any questions? Next.
The other bill that I would bring to your attention is on the back, House Bill 949. Last year, a group was put together, the Secretary of State's put together a group called the Elections Advisory Council. The nonpartisan group, myself, another Republican, a Democrat, an independent member, as well as the chief counsel for the state Republican Party, as well as the chief counsel for the Democratic State Party, along with elections officials from all over Georgia, got together. And this is simply the compilation of the recommendations of that group, of which I was a part of unanimously. It does about 10 different things. and it just basically brings current much of the code that we needed to. A common sense example, I've already been asked, are you trying to let convicted felons vote? No, it simply fixes a provision, for example, and I know you would never be arrested in your home county, Mr. Chairman, but if you're arrested in your home county, you would not be able to receive an absentee ballot in your home county, but if you're arrested in my county, you could receive an absentee ballot. So it corrects those and a whole host of other things, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on that if you have it.
Sounds like I'm not going to get a ballot. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Brockway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I bring before you today House Bill 899. It's an election cleanup bill developed by the Secretary of State's office in conjunction with the Registrars Association as well as the Elections Superintendents Association around the state of Georgia. And it came out of committee, out of governmental affairs without any problems. And I ask for your favorable consideration of this bill and be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Willard. You want to mention the other one?
Sure. Well, I say, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to hold off on that. I need to talk to some people about that bill, and I may come back to you at a later time with some proposed changes, if that's all right.
That'd be fine.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Hatchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I bring to you House Bill 863. Has to do with the Department of Administrative Services, and it defines what a small business is. It is domiciled in the state of Georgia and will change the definition to less than 500 employees or less than $50 million in annual revenue. It also increases the no bid limit the Department of Administrative Services uses from $5,000 to $25,000. All of this being done to hopefully attract more bidders from small businesses.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm here to ask you to consider on House Bill 850 under modified open rule. It requires child care centers to educate parents about influenza vaccination. It does not require them to get vaccination. It's educational only, printing out 2 pieces of paper from the CDC.gov. Be happy to answer any questions.
You did say 845, right?
You know what? I think I said 850, but it is 845. I'm sorry about that.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
I move we recommit House Bill 463 back to committee.
Got to move. Anybody second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Roberts. Everybody in favor? Any opposed? The one listening is Mr. Smith. Excuse me, the front table up here. Larry, awake on the other end? He's gone. I'm not awake. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, I'd like to put my name besides House Bill 268 and House Bill 880.
Okay. Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask for House Bill 853. It's a fairly simple proposition, something that I realize there may be some disagreement, but in this House, generally sometimes there is, and sometimes a little bit of oratory and a little bit of look by the entire House of Representatives is a good thing. I'd like you to consider that today. It's good Wednesday bill.
Ms. Dempsey.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Meadows. I would like to ask for House Bill 434. This bill changes 2 words. On line 14, determinations to diagnosis, and on line 26, determined to diagnose. It will allow the licensed clinical social workers who under their scope of practice certainly are allowed to diagnose. It was changed when I believe Department of Community Health rewrote their policies. The Department of Community Health and Behavioral Health both are in support of it, and I would also like to ask that we move it to modified structure because it is very narrowly focused on the licensed clinical social workers only.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Hembry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'd like to request House Bill 730. This bill says that on government construction projects, bidders cannot be required to participate in collective bargaining agreements with labor unions.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name behind House Bill 268 and House Bill 845.
Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name behind House Bill 880.
Okay. Anybody else? Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by House Bill 434. That's the social work bill that will help us as we try to meet the federal requirements with dealing with our mentally ill patient citizens. And I'd like to put my name by House Bill 745. This is about the study for pulsometry. It's becoming sort of the standard across the nation, and Georgia really needs to look at how we would deal with that and what it would cost our Medicaid population.
Which one was that, Ms. Cooper? Okay. Ms. Manning.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like also to put my name by 745. Also, 681, please, sir.
Mr. Lindsay.
There will be a Rules Committee proposed amendment. It is being drafted in the form of Rules Committee amendment and is on its way. I believe most of the committee has seen a draft of it, but I would ask for you to put it at the end of the line, and we'll hopefully have an amendment for everyone to look at along the lines of what I think everyone here has already seen informally already, but it is being put in the form of the Rules Committee amendment to go to the floor. Legislative Council is presently drafting it in its proper form.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set part of the calendar for tomorrow. Under modified structure, SB 231. Do you hear move? Your second? Oh, all those in favor signify by aye. Y'all don't mind us. We don't know what we're doing right up here right now. Okay. HB 730. Do I hear move? All those, HB 730 under modified structure. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. HB 640 under the modified structure. Do I hear a move? Do I hear a second? Second. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Under modified structure, HB 514. Do I hear a move? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Under modified open, HB 687. All those in favor signify. Any opposed? HB 769. Do you hear a move? Do you hear a second? All those in favor signify. Opposed? HB 850. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Under structured, HB 811. Do you hear a move? All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? Since we know what's coming, on your yellow sheet you've got HR 1162, so I'm going to go ahead and put the HR 1162. I'm going to put it on, then we're going to have the amendment done and just when it gets here. Y'all just have to sit still.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to say it yet, but we'll put it on in a minute.
Everything I have to start.
Anybody want to tell funny stories? If it's not funny, I'll gong you.
Yeah.
Well, it shouldn't be.
you're not.